Welcome everyone to another unboxing here. I'm Vampire Preacher. I was about to say I'm Retro Vixen. I'm Vampire Preacher. I'm here today with yet another Marvel Legends unboxing. For you today, since there have been no waves, I'm doing a little bit of an interesting unboxing today. Now, we all know of heroes like Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, God of Thunder. But what about the people we don't really hear about? The Marvel Universe is nothing if we don't have the little guy. I'm talking, of course, about henchmen. Not just evil henchmen. Now, I know people think of henchmen as just being the bad guys. And yeah, they usually are. But henchmen of different varieties. In this case, I'm talking about anyone that's not a mainstay hero. Anyone that's not going to be on the front lines out there. The people that are just going to be going out and trying to live in a world with superheroes. So, today, I've got 3 box sets that I'm going to be unboxing. Hey there, Retro Vixen, how you doing today? I'm going to be doing 3 box sets that I'm going to be unboxing, 1 standalone figure, and at the end of the stream, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to vote. I want to do 1 bonus unboxing at the behest of you guys. So, let's see what we've got for the day. 2 of our box sets are a little bit older. 1 is brand new. And the single figure that we're going to be doing the unboxing of is also a little bit older, but you'll see the theme here. So, to kind of ramp up the fun, we're going to start off with the Toys R Us exclusive Hydra Agent 2-pack. Now, as you can see, this has a normal standard Hydra Trooper along with an elite Hydra Enforcer. Of course, the Enforcer is going to be using the Hyperion body, so it's going to have a lot of the articulation that we've seen with that before, but let's see exactly what we've got inside the box here. Now, as I said before, this box set is a Toys R Us exclusive, meaning if you didn't get it when there was a Toys R Us, it's going to be a tough time finding it. As we've seen every week so far, we've got the window pane on the front and the portrait on the back. Inside of the box, we've got, I'm so amazed here, 2 Hydra agents. I'm joking. So, first things first, as we do, the back paneling has the Hydra symbol on it, which is always a nice thing for them to have. It really brings forward the theme that we've got here. Inside the packaging, we've got the 2 agents, the Hydra Standard Trooper and the Hydra Elite Enforcer. We have 4 extra heads. That's a whole lot of heads. A bazooka. It's the same bazooka that we saw with the Drax Volume 2 from Guardians of the Galaxy figure. We have this weird alien-looking rifle. The futuristic shotgun that we first saw with the Chameleon. The pump-action shotgun that we've before seen with Scourge. And an extra vest. Plus the knife that we've seen from Nuke. Amazingly, because we have the same body with the same vest that we saw on Nuke just the other week. Speaking of, let's start with our big guy, since he's a big fella. So, inside of the package, this is our Elite Hydra Enforcer. And he, yes, is a pretty big dude. A thing of note, just like with Nuke, the back of the vest here, if we can see, even though my light's a little bit overly bright, he's got that knife holster on his back, the sheath, if you will. Since knives are put in sheaths, guns are put in holsters. And that knife that we saw in the package is going to slide perfectly right in there. which does kind of complete the figure, makes him a little bit more rounded. We will examine the extra heads in just a moment, but first, as we always do, let's examine the articulation. Now, for those of you with a keen eye, you'll recognize this head as the Captain Britain head from the Abomination wave. And that's because it is. They just reused Captain Britain's head, they repainted it and repurposed it. It still looks good for what they've done with it. But eagle-eyed fans will know that there's a lot of reuse on these two figures. As I've said before, the vest is entirely from Nuke, which means it should be removable just as it was with him, and of course it is. Because this is the Hyperion body, it should have, just like the Venom figures that we looked at previously, and Nuke that we looked at just a few weeks ago. Yep, it's got the two back pegs right there on the back. So you know for certain it is definitely just a reuse of the Nuke body. But I think they've done a fairly good job with it. After all, someone's got to be torn up by Wolverine, and I'm not volunteering anytime soon. This guy did, though. For his articulation, we're getting, actually a little bit better than 90 degrees out of the shoulders. That's pretty good for the Hyperion buck. We, of course, have the bicep swivel. As seen there, the double-jointed elbows, which have a decent amount of range. He can flex pretty well. He can't flex quite all the way, but he can flex pretty well. For his his hand articulation, we of course have the 90-degree in and out for his hands, as seen there. For his neck articulation, he can look all the way down. That's decent neck articulation. It's what we've come to expect from the Hyperion buck at this point. For his up neck articulation, actually isn't at all impeded by the vest. I really thought it would be, but no, he can look up fairly well. Color me impressed with that. He does have a ab crunch in here. It's just kind of covered up by the vest. If you see, you can even see the line right here. His forward ab crunch. You're not really getting him to go forward at all unless you undo the vest. Only way you're really getting that forward articulation is by opening up the vest on him. And with the backward articulation, pretty much the same goes to be said there. Not bad articulation on the upper half of him. He, of course, has the waist swivel here. For his hips, alright, color me impressed. He's got a lot better hip articulation than I was anticipating him to have, especially with all of the pouches around here, the pouches on his two thighs, and the little strap that's along this hip. I really expected him to be impeded greatly by that, but no, he's got some pretty decent hip articulation. He also has, of course, the standard thigh cut. For his knees, he, of course, has the double-jointed knees that we've come to expect. However, because of the sculpting that's been done on them, that's as far as it's going to go. You're only getting 90 degrees. That's not so bueno. Yeah, no, that's it. No matter how I try and configure this, all it's getting to at maximum is that 90. That's not even good articulation if you've had knee replacement surgery. So, this guy, he's not doing so hot. He does have the boot cut, which is to be expected as he does have a pair of boots on, unsurprisingly. He does have the rocker ankle and can get a decent range of motion inward and outward on those ankles, along with barely any forward articulation, but a good amount of back articulation. if you look very closely here, I'll actually turn off our light here so that we don't have quite as much glare coming through. But if you look very closely, his boots actually have the lacing detailed on there. That's a nice little bit of detail. Speaking of his boots, the bottom around the edge of the boots are detailed, almost like we saw with the Punisher a few weeks ago, but not quite so much. The Punisher figure from a few weeks ago had a little bit better articulation, or a little bit better sculpting around the base of those boots. Let's get this guy back on so that I'm not doing this review completely in the dark. He had a little bit better sculpting, not just around the base of the boot, but on the actual bottom of his boots. He had detailed sculpting. That being said, they've done a decent amount of work with this for reusing a bunch of parts. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, a lot of this is part reuse. Pretty much the whole figure in my hand here is reused parts, just made to look like a different character. Speaking of part reuse, let's examine these heads. Because these heads are, let's call it duck a duck here. They're reused parts. So, we've got the standard, as I said before, Captain Britain head. However, those of you that saw my review of the Netflix figures a few weeks ago will remember the Nuke head. And it's pretty much one-to-one Nuke's head. They did a little bit of different coloring on the one eye, and they gave him a bigger scar along that side of his face, but it's essentially just Nuke's head reused for this figure. Now, it does look pretty nice on the figure. I believe this one is supposed to be for the big guy as well, although I might be wrong. They gave so many heads, I'm not sure who's supposed to have what. It doesn't seem to quite fit, so this might actually be the little guy's head. It'd be a little bit odd to me if they only included 2 heads for the big guy and 3 for the little, but to be fair, they only included 5 heads, so it's not like it was going to be even no matter what they did. Now, if you're looking for small armory bits for your figures, these guys have them in spades. These guys have more armory pieces than you know what to do with. That's not true, I know what to do with all of them, but as was mentioned before, the bazooka piece that comes with it is the same as we saw from Drax's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 figure. It's just, again, a reuse of that piece, but it's a good reuse. If there's any time I want that particular piece to be reused, it would be with this particular figure. And if I can get him to hold it, which is a little bit of an issue here, as the piece was designed for a smaller character, not on a Hyperion buck. Makes it a little bit hard to put this bazooka in his hands. That being said, you can get it to be held up. So, you can have him on the ready with that. We also, as I said before, have the very odd laser rifle. Now, we've seen this laser rifle before. This is actually the same one as was included with the... I believe this is the one from Winter Soldier during Captain America the Winter Soldier, the second Captain America movie. This was either included with the Winter Soldier himself or with the Hydra figures from that wave, rather. Might have been with the Hydra figure, might have been with the AIM agent. Now, something that is kind of killing me with this figure, even though he has large guns, he does not have trigger fingers for them. Why you would make a character that's supposed to hold guns and not give him trigger fingers, I'm looking at you, Walgreens version Punisher, is beyond me. You need a trigger finger to pull the trigger. Just kind of makes sense. So that is a very odd design choice. That being said, it's a nice figure. If you're trying to do a villain display and you want some Hydra agents to go behind the Red Skull, Baron von Strucker, or any other members of the Hydra team, these guys are going to be where you're going to be going for. Now, as I said before, this was an exclusive just for Toys R Us. So, if you're trying to army build these guys and have a lot of 10 of them, you might be out of luck. Now, second in the box that we have is our smaller Hydra agent. I'm trying to pop out some of his accessories as well, so we can get looking at them as we review our figure. We'll talk about the remainder in just a moment. Now, I believe this guy's going to be on our Bucky Cap body. It looks very much like the Bucky Cap. There's no butterfly shoulders or anything fun like that. He's just kind of a standard figure. However, for the kind of... We've got a Hydra Trooper here. He's not supposed to be anything spectacular. He's supposed to be what he is. Cannon fodder. And that's what he looks like. Now, for those of you that don't have this set, I do have a recommendation for you. Pick it up soon. If you're looking for certain figures, namely this one, not even the Enforcer, not the big guy, this figure is going to become very hard to come by and very expensive very, very soon. The reason why is simple. An alternate head for this figure is coming out with the next series of Legendary Riders. One of the new Legendary Riders coming out is Professor Charles Xavier. It's very cool. Everybody likes Professor Xavier in the golden hover chair. That's a figure that people have been dying to get for a long time. The other one is Deadpool. How is he a Legendary Rider? I'm glad you asked. Deadpool comes with his scooter and a sheet of stickers for said scooter. He also comes with Dogpool and Squirrelpool and an alternate head for this figure to make Bob, Agent of Hydra. Fans of Deadpool comics will remember that Bob is a featured part of Deadpool's later comics. He even had a cameo in the first Deadpool movie as Deadpool was slashing through everyone, absolutely murdering people. He stops at one guy and goes, "Bob? Wade? Hey, I haven't seen you since, what was it? Panama. How you been? How's the wife and kids?" That guy. They're making an exclusive head, which is a half-masked figure just like this, but with a big smile on his face, because Bob is usually smiling. He spends his time with Wade. Of course he's smiling. So, if you do not have this figure, and you are a big fan of Deadpool, pick it up soon, because it is going to become very expensive very quickly. Scalpers know that it's coming, and they're already jacking up their prices. Once it's out, forget about it. You're going to be able to buy the Bob Agent of Hydra figure online, I'm sure of it, for a dramatic price. But, into the here and now, what do we have in front of us? Well, for his head articulation, he is able to look down in an amazing way, almost unnatural way. That might be helpful while you're posing your Hydra agents, since they're probably not going to be posed alive. He can also bend his neck rather far backward, giving him a great range of motion there. For his arm articulation, we've got a little bit better than 90 degrees, and that's pretty good. It's better than I was expecting out of him. We also have, of course, the bicep swivel, the double-jointed elbows, which are just a little bit too sculpted on the bicep for him to go too much further than right about here. If we put this down to 90 degrees, then you'll see we're not getting a whole lot of flex out of him. We're only getting so much, not the full thing. For his hands, of course, we've got the 90-degree in-out articulation. And of all things... Oh no, never mind. Disregard. We do have at least one trigger finger on this figure. But we only have one trigger finger. The other one is not a trigger finger. It's just a grasping hand. But it's... He doesn't have the separate index finger. He can't hold a rifle or gun. That's really odd. For this figure, additionally, we've got the one post there on the back. We've got the ab crunch here, which can go a decent ways forward. And that's as far as he's going back. I think it's part of the sculpting of his trapezius muscles here, as seen right there, that's really stopping his sculpt from going any further backward. And a little bit of a shame there. Unless I'm going to be posing these guys just next to someone like Baron von Strucker, Madame Hydra, or even Red Skull, I'm probably going to be posing them dead in some kind of graphic fashion, being, again, ripped asunder by someone like... Oh, first one that comes to mind is Wolverine. Or being given a concussion by Captain America. So you'd expect them to have a little bit better articulation than what he's got. He, of course, has the waist swivel for our hip articulation. That's it. Amazingly, our big guy has better hips than our standard trooper. That's a little surprising, as he doesn't have half as much of the kibble on his thighs, nor by his hips, that the big guy does. I expected this to actually be the reverse, and I've been sorely disappointed. For his thighs, we do, of course, have the thigh cut, the double-jointed knees present, and it goes back a decent ways. Doesn't go back as much as it should. It should be able to go to about here, but some of the sculpting in there is just preventing that. I'm not exactly sure what either, as it looks like he should be able to keep going, but he just can't. Additionally, we do have the boot cuts, thankfully, as once again he is wearing boots. It'd be kind of silly not to have those, even if his boots aren't quite lining up with his calves. That's a unfortunate feature. The rocker ankles are on display and present, and he can get them outward to a very unnatural degree and inward as well. For the ankle articulation here, he can go a little bit forward, but on point is where he really shines, being able to go pretty much completely on point there. Now, this figure also does come with a couple of extra pieces that you can swap out. The H little strap here can actually come off, and with a quick pop of the head, we can remove that completely. Now that we've got that removed, we can instead pop on this yellow Hydra vest. Somewhat like we've got on the larger gentleman, but not quite the same. The larger one uses the vest from Nuke that we've seen before. The smaller one, I'm not sure where this vest is from. I'm pretty sure it's a reuse of another vest from another Legends figure, but I'm not 100% sure which one it is. I'll be honest with you guys. If anyone knows, please let us know in the vlog, or heck, even on my Twitter. You can also throw me a link in the Discord and let me know, hey, what figure did this vest first come from? However, that's how it looks on the figure. It's alright looking. It's not fantastic, but it's not horrible. I kind of personally prefer the little strap across his chest there. It looks a little bit more Hydra-like to me, but this isn't a bad thing. Since we've got his standard Hydra head off, let's see about those additional heads. Oh, that has to be for the big guy, as that is just disproportionately huge. I don't know why that head wasn't fitting on our big guy before, but that is disproportionately large. Yee. For the other two heads, people that have a keen eye will notice that this head that comes with it is just a recoloring of the Taskmaster head that we got back in the Onslaught, the Red Onslaught wave. They've just taken that same Taskmaster head and repainted it to Hydra colors. It's alright, but honestly, Taskmaster's head is so iconic, I wouldn't really want it on another figure. That being said, we also have, and we'll review the figure this comes from a little bit later on today. We have kind of a generic trooper head. Now, honestly, this is a nice enough looking head for someone being just very general and very generic. That being said, I'd prefer to use that particular generic head for the figure I'll be showing off a little bit later on. The figure that comes from is the Giant Man Wave Nick Fury. If you take notice here, over here is the exact same head. It's the same thing, just slightly recolored. Honestly, I prefer it for the Shield agents over our Hydra agents here. I think it just goes a little bit better with them. And the Hydra agent's half-mask cowl there is so iconic in comics. If I'm going to be having someone of this size, I'd prefer them to be wearing that over anything else, if I'm being 100% honest. Additionally, while the little vest is a nice touch, it's not for me. It's a no from me. For me, it's going to be the very traditional, very iconic Hydra strap here, going across the chest. And in addition to that, once I can get that on, there we are. I'm personally going to be displaying him with the traditional Hydra strap and the traditional Hydra head. When I think of a Hydra agent, that's what I think of him as looking like. The vest is a nice piece. It's not for me. The additional heads here are... they're good enough, but I honestly don't see why I want to change them out of these normal heads. Now granted, if that's how you want to display them, you do have options. You have several options. You got 2 extra options per figure. But it's not going to be for me. Now, the additional 2 weapons that these figures come with were giving me a little bit of a hard time coming out of their packaging. There we are. Sorry about that. Now, the additional 2 weapons are the sawed-off tactical shotgun that we've seen previously with Scourge of the Underworld, and the futuristic laser shotgun with the removable drum that we first saw with the Chameleon. As a note, this one does have a little paint deco on the front there. If you can't see, that is the Hydra symbol, just done in yellow, so it makes it very on brand for these particular villains. For me, I'm probably going to be displaying them either with this particular weapon or with this kind of ridiculous oversized laser rifle. The sawed-off shotgun, well, being a very nice piece, just doesn't seem very Hydra for me. When I think of Hydra trying to take down Wolverine, they're usually trying to either A, take him alive, or B, try and vaporize him with actual lasers. They're not ever trying to kill him, because, one, they know it's not going to work, and two, they're not going to get too many shots off before they start getting cut. Now, his hands are a little bit awkward to try and pose on this futuristic shotgun that they've got. But with a little bit of doing, it does work. It does take 10 seconds of trying to really get the hands posed, but it can work. The hands on both these figures seem a little bit tight for whatever reason. I'm not sure exactly why. They just seem tighter than they normally are. So it makes posing them with weapons in hand a little bit more difficult. Not so much, but a little bit. But yes, if he's going to be having a weapon, he's probably going to be having one of these very odd futuristic weapons in my display, not one of the more realistic ones, just because he's a Hydra agent. I'm not going to expect him to live very long. The shelf life of these guys is fairly short. Possibly with the exception of Bob, even though we've even seen Bob die several times. That's what happens when you hang around with Deadpool. If you can get your hands on this set for a decent price, I do highly recommend it. Mostly because, as is the theme of today's stream, we've got our unsung, lesser cared for characters here. It's not that they're lesser known, it's just that they're lesser cared for. Nobody really clamors for a figure of a guy without a name when you can get Iron Man or Captain America. One of the big ones that now are the meat and potatoes of Marvel Comics. That being said, it's a nice set. I wouldn't pay more than $50 for it if I was out there on the secondary market. It is a very nice set, don't get me wrong. But any more than $50 on this just honestly seems like you're being ripped off. Because it is now a harder to find set. And people, of course, know that because Toys R Us is now out of business, so they can charge whatever they feel like. Next up, since we've already taken a little bit of a look at them, we're going to be doing a few of our Hydra. We've already done our Hydra members. We're going to be taking a look at a few S.H.I.E.L.D. members next. So as I showed you guys before, this is the Giant Wave Nick Fury. This is from the Giant Man Wave Nick Fury. As you can see, he comes with the arm of Giant Man. He comes with his needle gun, 2 additional heads, and is the comic book version of Nick Fury. Window pane on the front and the portrait on the back, along with the other figures in the wave. As I said before, this is a older figure, so if you can find him for cheap, then go ahead. Otherwise, it's up to you. Personally, I like the fact that I can kind of bulk throughout the ranks of my S.H.I.E.L.D. agents with him, and let me show you why. The packaging has the Captain America shield just very faintly done on the background. Inside, we had the arm of Giant Man here. And if you guys can't tell from looking at it, I have opened up this figure once just to take out that Giant Man arm. And I did do a head swap just because I wanted a slightly different figure in my collection before I went swapping around pieces and putting them on display. Now, as is, the figure comes with the comic book version of Commander Nick Fury's head on the body, as seen here. This also appears to be based off of the Bucky Cap Buck, as it has the one peg in the back here, and does not have the butterfly shoulders. So we should be seeing pretty much the same kind of articulation that we did in the smaller Hydra Trooper. Although apparently, for whatever reason, probably because of that strap in the way. No, not because of the strap. That's interesting. Trying to see if our straps here have turned around or anything to make this the case. It seems as though the shoulder articulation on his left arm goes up slightly higher than his right arm on this particular figure. Now that's very unusual. We'll get to his arms in just one moment. For his neck articulation, he can look down just as well as our Hydra Trooper could, and can look up actually a little bit better than even the Hydra Trooper. He does have the bicep swivel, just as we saw in the previous figure. And can actually get his arm to more than 90 degrees. He does have a little bit of extra sculpting on the bicep to make it so that it can't get quite further, but he can get it beyond 90 degrees. For our hand articulation, we of course have the 90 degree in and out, but that does seem to be inhibited just a little bit by the wrist cuff here. If you look closely, the gloves have a sculpted piece around the wrist, but because of that, he can't quite get the full 90 degrees inward of his wrist. Once again, it does look a little bit like he's doing an Armstrong pose. That he does, Retro, that he does. Once again, out of pure curiosity's sake, they've given him one trigger finger and one non-trigger finger. Now for this, I'm almost willing to forgive that because he only came with one weapon. The needle gun that is so iconic for Captain Fury. Which, of course, he holds perfectly well in his hand, and it looks just fine. It is his iconic weapon, after all, so it's what I would expect him to have. If he didn't have this weapon, I'd be a little bit confused. Now, because of his arm articulation, he's not really letting me... There we go. I was going to say he's not really letting me go in too far with the shoulder articulation, making it so he can't quite hold his gun straight, but he can for a decent degree. Of course, he has to hold that in his right hand because you can see out the left eye. Anyway, yes, from FMA. For our ab crunch, that's as far forward as we're getting with him. And for back, much like with our Hydra Trooper, those trapezius muscles are making it so that he cannot go any bit further back. He does have the waist swivel, but because of the way they've sculpted on his utility belt here, he can't utilize it as well as the later Hydra Trooper, which is a little unusual. For our hips, oh yeah, we're getting... Once again, oddly enough, we're getting better articulation out of his left side than we are his right side. for whatever reason. There's not as much kibble around the right that would be impeding that. I'm not 100% sure why that is the case. He does have the thigh swivel, of course. The double jointed knees, which can actually go farther back than they were with the Hydra agent. But not much farther. Once again, he's got some weird sculpting going on here that's keeping him from getting it to this full angle, which it really should be able to do. I'm able to get it to that angle, but as soon as I let go, it just snaps back for whatever reason. He, of course, has the boot cut, just as we saw previously. The rocker ankles, which can go in and out to, once again, a fairly ludicrous degree. His forward ankle articulation is alright, and his backward ankle articulation is actually pretty solid. He can go almost as far on point as the... Actually, I think it's about as far as the Hydra soldier could. But once again, we're seeing that same problem. If you look closely, his boot isn't quite lined up with his calf. It's over slightly, like it's just not rendered correctly. That's very odd to me. Now, if, like me, you say, well, I like the figure, but I'm not going to be displaying him as Director Fury. Because, well, I've got other Director Fury figures, both the original ToyBiz one and one that's going to be reviewed later on in this very stream. He does have two additional heads. One, as I mentioned before with that Hydra Trooper, is a very basic, just kind of covered mask. And like I said with the Hydra Trooper, I actually just prefer this version with the shield agent. It just looks a little bit more appropriate here. Honestly, it just looks like a better figure to me in this manner. Really, it looks like the kind of soldier I would expect from S.H.I.E.L.D. The other head that he comes with is actually a known character, but one that wasn't good enough to get his own figure, apparently. Dirk Anger. Yes, that is his actual name, and yes, that is a Dragon Ball Scouter that he is sporting on the right-hand side. He is an actual S.H.I.E.L.D. agent from the comic books, but apparently he wasn't good enough to get his own figure, just a secondary head on a figure for someone more popular like Director Fury. That being said, he's kind of a trolly meme character, but if you're like me and you want to really bolster out the ranks of your S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, Dirk Anger is a nice addition to that. Since if you combine all of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. figures that they've made thus far, you have Director Fury, you have Dirk Anger, you have the standard S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, you also have the MCU version of Director Fury and Agent Coulson, plus two different versions, both comic book and MCU, of Maria Hill. There's also a comic book version, actually there's two comic book versions of Sharon Carter. So if you want to really bolster out the ranks of your S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, the way that I do, there's even, if you go back a little bit further, a Dum Dum Dugan figure that came out as part of a 2-pack with a hand ninja. One figure was the hand ninja, the other figure was, it was supposed to be Nick Fury, but if, like me, you sought out the Chase variant, you instead got the head of Dum Dum Dugan. So, you could have Director Fury, Dirk Anger, Dum Dum Dugan, Maria Hill, Sharon Carter, Agent Coulson, a standard S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and even try and make your own Melinda May and Quake. So you can have a pretty decent S.H.I.E.L.D. team just from the figures that they've put out. Now, mind you, they don't yet have official figures for Quake or for Melinda May just yet. But since we're on the topic of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, as I've already shown you guys, the next box set we're going to be reviewing is the Toys R Us exclusive Avengers Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box set. It's got the window pane on the front. On the back, it's got the individual blurbs about the 3 characters contained within. Inside of the package, there's action figures in it. I'm joking. We've got the background there with the Avengers symbol. Inside, we have Maria Hill with her 2 pistols. We've got Director Fury, the MCU version. Thank you very much for the host retro. And of course we've got Agent Phil Coulson with the Destroyer gun and an unsunglassed version of his head. Now, because he's the one I'm most excited about, we're going to go from right to left here. For the sometimes Agent, sometimes Director Hill. All depending on where S.H.I.E.L.D. is as an agency from one moment to another. Agent Maria Hill has been both the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. It all just depends on what point in time we're examining her role in S.H.I.E.L.D. Ooh, this is gonna be a rough review, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So, for Agent Hill, first, the good. They did a absolutely fantastic job with, I believe her name is Kobe Kellett. Actually, hang on one moment, guys. Let me grab that backing I used so that you can really see exactly what she looks like. Alright, and we've returned. So that you guys can really see what I'm talking about with the job they've done with the face sculpt here. If, of course, my camera is at all willing to zoom in. At all. Of course not. If you look very closely, they did a great job of sculpting her face. She looks like the woman from How I Met Your Mother. That's where she's from. She's also now Agent Maria Hill. The face sculpt is well done. The hair up in a bun is well done. They even have the Bluetooth device on the right side of her over here. That all looks amazing. The sculpting on it is fantastic. For her articulation, her arms can actually go pretty high up. They're going more than 90 degrees. That's impressive to me. Clearly, it doesn't take much to impress me anymore. But her arms can go above 90 degrees. That being said, we already know what's the next thing I'm going to say. Say it with me, chat. Hasbro. You can do better than single-jointed elbows for your female figures. Because that's all that we're getting as far as articulation. That's barely even 90 degrees. Not good, guys. If your men can do at least this... I mean, I haven't really seen one that can do this, but they can at least go to here. That's something. This isn't going to cut it. Elephant in the room here, she has some of the biggest hands I've seen. Why did they give her such incredibly long hands?
And it's almost comical how much they've done that. I don't know if she as an actress has just really, really long fingers or something, but her hands are huge. All I'm thinking of right now are Archer jokes. Anyway, she has the 90 degrees in and 90 degrees out for her hands. Now, an unusual thing is she has one closed fist and one open hand here. Why they chose to do that with this figure is kind of beyond me. Both the guns that they've given with the set... Hands are always touching things in places. Indeed, but both the guns that they've given look like her firearms that she's used before. Specifically, we saw her really use them in Captain America 2, The Winter Soldier. For whatever reason, she only has one hand that can actually grip her gun. The other one can't even grip in an actual stance to draw and hold. It can only be in a fist, for whatever reason. She's not really one to punch someone in the face. Unless it's the guy from How I Met Your Mother. If it's Neil Patrick Harris, then maybe she'll punch him in the face. Maybe. Anyway, enough jokes about How I Met Your Mother. For her neck articulation, I wish I was joking when I tell you all, that's as far down as she can look. And that's as far up. That is it. That is all we're getting out of her neck articulation. And that is because looking at the figure, she only has a ball joint neck. That's it. There's no hinge. There's nothing to give her any additional movement. Movement, yes. Movement. It's just a ball joint. I'm going to be honest, that's lazy sculpting. I said it last week with the A-Force box set. I'm saying it again today. That's lazy sculpting. Additionally, because she is, of course, a female figure, she does not have an ab crunch. That's as far forward as she can bend. And that's as far back as she can go. That's it. That's all of the articulation you're getting out of her waist. She can go a little bit side to side, but that's all. She does not have a waist swivel. There is no waist swivel here. There's no waist articulation. Just that weird midsection swivel. Kind of an odd choice. For her hips, I'm already looking at this saying this is going to be... Oh, yeah, that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all the articulation you're getting out of her hips. They did a lot of sculpting around here, and honestly, I feel like the twin Hulkster set here is really impeding on that. Especially since, if you look closely, these Hulksters with the guns that are sculpted into them, so you can't even use those Hulksters, and no, these guns are not removable. Those are just sculpted in there. They're just staying there no matter what. One on each side. Those are also attached to her hips. It's not like they have with other figures that we've seen where it's the piece of rubber around here that will move as you try and move the hip. No. Because of the Hulksters, her thigh cuts are pretty much rendered moot. You pretty much can't even use them. Because those Hulksters are glued onto her thighs, and the straps on the thighs are just painted on, those aren't moving. So, not a whole lot of action poses you're going to be getting this one into. For her knee articulation, she's got some decent range of movement, although, for whatever reason, her knees are also... It goes backward at an angle when I'm just moving it backward. I don't think that's something from posing inside the box. I I think that's just how they sculpted these. It just appears to be how they sculpted her legs, is that they will cross if you put them too far back. That's weird. Additionally, even though she is wearing boots, we have no boot cut. We see something that Hasbro has now gone away from in recent years, rear its ugly head, high heels. The high heels were the bane of most collectors' existence. First of all, a woman like Agent Hill wouldn't be wearing high heels. Come now. That's not in her character. She's the kind that would wear flats so that she can run after you and shoot you. She does have the rocker ankles, but only to a certain degree. They only go so far back and forth. She can get her foot fairly far forward. And she can go on point to a pretty disturbing degree for the fact that she's already wearing heels. Yikes. It is kind of a rough figure to have, I'm not gonna lie. It's not the best out there. But if you want to have an MCU collection, specifically if you're a big fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as I am, or if you just like the underdogs and teams, things like S.H.I.E.L.D. in general, and you did not get your hands on the Maria Hill Sharon Carter 2-pack from Walmart back in the day, then this is going to be your best option. Additionally, I'm attempting to pop out her handguns, and they are just really giving me the business trying to come out. Possibly because one of those handguns wants to belong to, for whatever reason. Speaking of odd design choices, for whatever reason, they packaged Sam Jackson with his boots going through the plastic to the opposite side. There are actually 2 holes for his boots to go through. That's a weird one. That's a very weird one. In a doubly weird thing, if you look closely at the figure, which a lot of this is reuse of previous parts with the new Sam Jackson official head. It used to be that the Ultimates version of Fury was loosely based on Sam Jackson, and then they made him 100% based on Sam Jackson when they actually cast Samuel L. Jackson for the role. I'm not sure what the purpose of that was. Maybe because he's a slightly taller figure and they wanted to keep them all at about the same head level. I'm not entirely sure. Now, the other thing I'm not entirely sure of is, well, these are the same guns that Maria Hill has sculpted into those holsters, and she can hold one in her hand, because she only has one trigger finger. Only one open hand that can hold it. And at that, her hand can't quite get to the trigger, which is a little bit unfortunate. The very odd thing here is that if you look closely at our Nick Fury figure here, he actually has a holster here on his chest, which perfectly fits the one gun. And he has another holster here on his thigh for the other. So you can have both of those guns stored in your Nick Fury. But, looking closely at his hands, only one of the hands is a trigger finger. The other one is this open claw type hand. Now, the question of why Nick Fury would have an open claw type hand would come to mind. Unless, of course, you knew that it was a basic reuse of the mold that they first used with the Red Skull from the Captain America line. Actually, pretty much the whole thing is a reuse, which was initially a reuse of the mold that they did for Director Fury before he was cast as Sam Jackson. So these pieces are quite a bit old. Now, why would he have the claw hand? Because that figure of the Red Skull came with a Tesseract to hold in his hand. This is the Tesseract hand. I don't see Director Fury holding the Tesseract anytime soon. But part reuse. So, before we get into more of that, let's examine the articulation on our figure. That's as far back as his neck can go. And because this is a family-friendly stream, that's as far as I can go with the classic catchphrase of Sam Jackson. Likewise, that is as far down as he can look. That is none too great. Now, he does have a hinge, but a big thing that's keeping him from being able to do any of the neck articulation or head articulation is the fact that he's wearing a tactical neck. A tactical turtleneck. A tactile neck, if you will. We've seen that on Archer a million times. Well, now you know why he wants to do it so bad. The super spy of all super spy. Yeah, monkey fighting. That's the phrase I wanted to use. Thank you, Retro. Yes, we have a tactical turtleneck being used by our super spy. Enough said there. For his arm articulation, it looks like we're getting about 90 degrees. I don't want to force it too much, because it's really not wanting to cooperate with me. That's as far as I'm really getting these arms. Any farther than that, and they're really giving me a great deal of resistance. Now, that might be the reason why this is the last figure I've seen with a trench coat that actually has a bicep swivel. Additionally, this is the last figure with a trench coat that I've seen with double-jointed elbows. For those of you that remember my review of the Netflix Punisher, he only had single-jointed elbows, as do most figures with the trench coats these days. However, Director Fury can get his arm fully flexed. He can get it 100% flexed. This is better than figures that don't have a trench coat on. Why is it, Hasbro, that y'all can make a figure with perfect arm articulation that's wearing a trench coat and you refuse to reuse those arms in later figures? I'm just curious, as I would love it if my Spider-Man Noir or my Multiple Man could do the same thing. As for his hand articulation, we barely got any kind of movement going on here because of the cuff of this trench coat he's got on. That's as far back as we're getting his hand without fear of it popping out, and that's as far forward. It's pretty much just able to hold the gun. Now, I will say, if you look past this rather old trench coat, they did do a great deal of sculpting here on his chest for that tactical turtleneck. And even the holsters here for him are removable. Or at the very least, hey there, Hypnotic! Or at the very least, they are soft goods, just like his trench coat is. He does not have a ab crunch like the newer figures do. He only has an ab swivel himself, meaning we're only getting this far forward and this far back from him. Not great articulation there. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't give him an ab crunch. That works, and good luck on your raid in Guild Wars. played Guild Wars in forever. It's been a number of years. Additionally, the figure does not have a waist swivel at all. It's just solidly in there. There's no waist swivel on the figure. That's a little bit unusual for the male figures that Hasbro does. No ab crunch and no ab cut, or no waist cut, is very weird. As is the double jointed elbow on someone wearing a trench coat. Anyway, moving on. For our hip articulation. Are we going to move at all? Or is this really frozen in place? He does have hip articulation. It's just very, very much frozen in where it is. He does not want to move his hips at all for us. Yowza! If you guys can't tell, this is taking me a little bit of doing to actually get done. Once it is done, he's got decent articulation for his hips. Much better than Maria Hill had, but still not fantastic. I will admit these figures are a little bit older. After all, they came out right around the time of the first Avengers and the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is why we've got the Agent Coulson figure here. He does have a thick cut, but because of the very odd articulation on his hips, it's almost rendered moot. There we are. That one moved a bit, but the double joint on his hip is really trying to go along with any movement that I do of that thigh cut. Very unusual. Again, for you guys to see, they did some great sculpting work here on these pants that he's wearing. They lay just like actual tactical milk spec pants do. I would know since I own a pair exactly like this. And they're beautifully sculpted. I will give them credit there. For his knees, we do have the double jointed knee here. But that's as far as it's going. Most of that is due to the sculpting on his thigh here. It's just a little bit too thick for him to go all the way back. Same thing with his just a little bit too muscular calves. Amazingly, for a figure with the coat actually doesn't block it, only because I was trying to move the coat out of the way. Part of me almost wants to remove the coat from him, just to see what he's looking like underneath it, but at the same time, I know his shoulders aren't so keen on trying to cooperate with me. So I'm a little bit afraid to do that to see what exactly it would do to our figure here. Otherwise, I think it would be a great figure without this big trench coat on. Now, amazingly, for a figure that has sculpted combat boots, he doesn't have a boot cut. These are sculpted combat boots with no boot cuts. Why? That just seems obvious to me. That's one cut. Moving on, before I question things too much, he does not have rocker ankles? The figure does not have rocker ankles. Now, I know that when this figure first came out, rocker ankles were a very new technology that they were starting to use, but this one just doesn't have them. Doesn't do them. He can only spin his foot 180 degrees. 360, actually. Which can still be incredibly painful looking, but he can't get the posability that you're looking for. For his forward boot articulation, that's it. And for backward, that's it. He has next to no articulation in his boots. They do have a little bit of sculpting on the bottom, as we saw with those, or at least with the larger Hydra agent from earlier, the Elite Enforcer. But he does not have quite the sculpting that the Punisher does on the bottom of his boots. There are just so many weird design choices here, all at once. The coat makes it so he can't quite put his arm down all the way, and he's only got one trigger finger, but he's got two holsters. So he can hold one gun on him and one in hand. If you're looking for an MCU version of Director Fury, it looks great. I'm not going to say it's going to pose very well, and that you'll be able to do half of the cool action shots that we've seen Director Fury do, but we can see him do more mundane shots. With the trench coat, he's not even going to be able to sit down for a cup of coffee with Tony Stark telling him to get out of the donut, but he is able to stand in the darkness to tell Tony Stark about the Avengers Initiative. The face does look exactly like Sam Jackson. I will give them that. If it's not zooming in perfectly, they even did the detail on his eye over here, the eye patch eye, where he's got the scarring around it from whatever wound happens to him in the upcoming Captain Marvel movie. As we've seen from press pictures, he has two eyes in that. And a full head of hair. Well, most of a full head of hair. It is Sam Jackson, after all. But I'm going to be very interested in how he gets those scars. I'm also very much enjoying the fact they gave him the scars for this particular figure. It looks very accurate to Sam Jackson. I'm very happy with the job they did. I'm not too happy with his articulation. I really think they could have done a better job there, since, jeez, he is a tough guy to pose. Moving on, the final figure that we have in this 3-pack is the one that I know I'm the most excited for. You guys should also be the most excited for. After all, he died to make it so that the Avengers would assemble. He rose from the dead to make Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. happen. And make it a rather interesting show. And, of course, at least for Retro Vixen, it's the only way to get any figures from the New Adventures of Old Christine. It's Agent Coulson. Now, the Agent Coulson figure here was the first figure that we've seen on the suit body. This suit body has been seen a couple of times since, but not very often. I personally would like to see it a lot more often. Yes, it's pretty much just Clark Gregg being Clark Gregg in a suit. I would personally love it if they would use this suit body more often. There are plenty of figures and plenty of characters who wear suits. Now, I know that there are people out there saying, but you can't sell a guy in a suit. I'd buy a figure of a guy in a suit. Heck, if you sold me a bunch of different versions of this suit without Clark Gregg's head, with just different colored ties and different color suits, I'd buy a whole bunch of them. Partially to have a unmasked Tony Stark as just Tony Stark. Not being Iron Man with Tony Stark's head, but just being Tony Stark. Suits are indeed versatile. It's how you can have King T'Chaka from the UN meeting when he passed on during the second Avengers. I'm sorry, during I keep on wanting to say Avengers. Captain America: Civil War. You can have King T'Challa in a suit, addressing the UN at the end of Black Panther. You can have a young Tom Holland trying to go to Homecoming. I mean, during Spider-Man Homecoming, he was wearing a suit. And they do have an unmasked Tom Holland head from a 2-pack of Tom Holland Spider-Man and a empty Tony Stark Iron Man. Like the empty suit from Spider-Man Homecoming. I'd personally love it if I can get just a whole bunch of suits. The only times we've seen it really since is for the Chameleon figure and the Bruce Banner figure that was exclusive to Amazon. Beyond that, we haven't seen this body very often. I'd love it if we'd see more of it. In the meantime, enough about me prattling on about the need for more suits in our toys. Let's get on with the review. For his head, he's got a decent amount of downward neck motion. It is impeded a little bit by his collar and his tie. For his upward motion, he can actually look up pretty high. Not 100%. It's impeded a little bit by his hair, of all things. But it's alright. For his arms, that's as high up as either of them are getting. Once again, we're getting a little bit more articulation out of the right arm than we are the left, for whatever reason. It seems like the sculpting that they've done up here on the upper arm to make it look like a suit is just impeding on his ability to raise his arm up much higher than this. Yeah, that's all that you're getting as far as raising his arms up. Now, he does have the bicep swivel here, and the double-jointed elbows. To which he can fully... Wow. He can fully flex his arm. I'm just going to ask, out of pure question, Hasbro. We have so many figures that have come out since this. Wearing suits, wearing trench coats. Not wearing suits and trench coats, like the Dirk Anger figure. / comic book Nick Fury figure. Why is it that Clark Gregg can flex better than most of your other figures? Maybe it's time to re-examine some of your old molds and start using those instead. For his wrist articulation, he can go out a decent degree. He's not going great with it, but his inward wrist articulation is where he really suffers. He can only go about this far in. He can't go the full 90 degrees, and that's because of the sculpting around his cuff here, which, while it does make it look like a suit, also impedes on his articulation. Now, this figure, underneath the vest and the tie, actually does have an ab crunch. So, Agent Coulson has better range of articulation than Agent Hill and Deputy Director Fury. Just saying. And he can bend farther backward as well. He also has a waist swivel, something we didn't even see with Director Fury. For his hip articulation, making sure that the coat isn't impeding, that's as far out as we're going to get. And for his thigh, he does have a thigh swivel, which is a good thing. He does have the double-jointed knee, as seen here. Now, the suit is making it so he can't quite bend his knee all the way back, but he can bend it a decent ways. Amazingly, Coulson does have rocker ankles, unlike Fury. And he can get these wingtip shoes out quite a bit each way. Which, if you look very closely, they even did the articulation, the sculpting of the laces on his wingtips. It's a little bit funny to me that they went that far detailed. Additionally, that is as far back as he's going to get because of the sculpting of the pant legs, and that's as far forward. It's not great articulation for that. That being said, he looks amazing. It looks like Clark Gregg. It even looks more so like Clark Gregg if you use the head without the sunglasses, even though, honestly, when I think of Agent Coulson, I think of the sunglassed head. That being said, the head without the sunglasses looks just as nice. I personally prefer the sunglass head, but his head without them, really wish this camera would focus here. There we go. His head without the sunglasses still looks pretty good, and he's got a little bit of a smirk going with it. Versus the more straight face look of the sunglass version. Now, he also does have one trigger finger hand for the destroyer weapon. Now, you all may remember this from the first Avengers movie as being the thing that we don't even know what it does. That's what it does. It is based off the technology from the Destroyer as seen in the first Thor movie. Now, because of the way his trigger finger is, it's giving me a little bit of trouble trying to get this Destroyer gun into his hand, but after just a couple seconds of doing, fits in pretty well. Additionally, they even made it so that he can hold the front portion of the gun perfectly. Which is more than a little bit surprising. They did a fantastic job with this figure. Honestly, it's the one that sold the set for me. I'm a big fan of Agent Coulson. I really like that they made him into an action figure. I think they did a great job with this. This is, of the three, it is my favorite figure. Now, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to be just one moment. I'm going to BRB very quickly. It's just going to be 2 seconds. In the meantime, enjoy the music. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that minor delay. We are back now. So, yes, as I was saying, if you can still find the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 3-pack, I do highly recommend it, if anything, just for your Agent Coulson Clark Gregg figure. It will, 1, bolster your Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. collection, and 2, I like the character. Not gonna lie. For our final unsung heroes of Marvel unboxing today. I just picked it up yesterday, and it's what made the entire theme for today in the first place. that box set is the AIM Agent 2-pack. Now, those of you that know AIM, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, will know that they are not good guys. They are the ones that created MODOK. They have also served as villains in several different mediums for Marvel, including, but not limited to, the new Spider-Man game on PS4, where AIM is mentioned several times. Now, here we have our 2 AIM agents, 1 AIM trooper and 1 AIM scientist. The window pane, of course, on the front, and on the back, we've got the blurb about each of them. Inside of the packaging, if these guys are willing to come out. Now that's unique. I'll show you guys in just a moment what I just found out, and I'm a little bit surprised by it. Now, of all things, the backgrounds that we normally see are things like just the shield of Captain America, the Avengers symbol, something like that. Amazingly here, we have a background that almost looks like a comic book panel for an AIM laboratory. Almost as though they want you to use this as part of your display. Now, I think that's a really neat thing. As someone who's always looking to up his displays in some way or another, I really do like the fact that I can have a display that's comic accurate. Inside of the packaging, we have the 2 AIM soldiers, that funky sci-fi rifle, as we've seen before, the same knife and gun that we saw with Scourge of the Underworld, 2 extra heads, the same odd rifle that they gave to Deadpool recently, in that way that we've talked about rather recently. It was the gray Deadpool, the X-Force one, and another kind of funky sci-fi futuristic gun, along with a AA-12 pump-action shotgun. I believe that the Scourge of the Underworld figure had this as well. If it didn't, then I know the Walgreens Punisher did. I noticed that people who are paying attention to the stream will note that I've been mentioning Scourge of the Underworld quite a bit, especially while opening up this particular box set. There's a reason for that. This is pretty much one-to-one the Scourge of the Underworld figure. It's pretty much exactly that figure, just redone in a new deco. Now, what I was, before I get into reviewing our figure here, what I was so taken aback by was that they included 2 sets of shoulder straps. Now, I did not see these at first in the box, and was surprised that they included a set in both brown and in gray, so that if you want to wrap those around your figure and have 2 shoulder straps on them, you definitely can. Color me impressed there. The reason that I keep on mentioning that previous figure, Scourge of the Underworld, is even down to the boot knife, as seen here, and as holstered here. If I can get it to go in all the way, as it should. And the golden gun, as holstered here. Those are pieces all taken directly from the Scourge of the Underworld figure, as is the head. Uh, so it's definite part reuse here. That being said, it looks neat enough. For me, I'm not used to seeing my AIM soldiers with that weird, very tactical head. But it's alright, as he does come with... Both figures come with additional heads. Now you could make it so that they match, each of them having the more traditional AIM blockhead here. Now for me on this figure, that looks a little odd. It doesn't quite look right just because of how tactical this figure is made out to look. This is an AIM scientist head. So for me, that doesn't look 100% correct. If I'm being honest, I'm probably going to display it with this head. I believe this is the same head they used recently for Paladin. But it just looks a little bit more right with this head on. Better than with the Scourge head, and I'm not sure if I like it or the traditional AIM head better, but that's just because I'm a comic loyalist. Before we get into all of that and all of the accessories, let's examine the articulation. As these are brand new figures, they should have the newest machining to give them the best articulation possible. We would hope. For his forward neck articulation, he can go pretty far down. And for the backward neck articulation, he can look almost straight up. That's pretty good. For his arm articulation, we've got right about 90 degrees. Not much better, not much worse. Just about 90 degrees. Oh. Yeah, right at about 90. We do have the bicep swivel, of course. The double-jointed elbows, once again, are present. However, they only go about that far due to the sculpting on the gauntlets here. Additionally, his hands go in almost 90 degrees. And they go out a decent amount. I won't call it the full 90, but it's a decent amount out. Most of that is being caused by the gauntlet here, limiting articulation just a little bit. I'm not sure if this chest is a new piece or not. I think it's the same as the Scourge of the Underworld chest piece, but I might be incorrect. Anyway, it's a pretty nice feeling chest piece, and it's got some good detail work on it. On the front and on the back. However, I can already tell you that when examining the ab crunch, he'll be able to go forward, but just with a quick cursory look, he can barely go back. He can go back a little bit, but not very far. He does, of course, have the waist swivel and a thigh cut, and unlike the Maria Hill figure, the holster on his left side is movable, meaning that he can still move his hip even with that holster being on. Speaking of hips, for his hip articulation, it's actually much better than I thought it would be. It's definitely better than Maria Hill's. It's about as good as Nick Fury's was, so that's alright. For his knees, we of course have the double-jointed knee, but it's only going this far back. Most of that's due to the sculpting around his knee area here. He's got a little bit of fabric bunching. If you look closely right here, they've actually sculpted in some fabric bunching, which looks really good. But it does make the articulation suffer a slight bit. They did include boot cuts in with these figures, thankfully. He also has the rocker ankles, of course. For his forward and backward foot articulation, He can go forward a little bit. He's really going to shine going back, but it's not quite on point. It's just a decent degree backward. That being said, it's a very neat looking figure. I'm a fan, but I also like the weird figures of characters that you wouldn't normally expect to have a figure made of them. Like aim grunts. The foot soldiers, who normally mean nothing to anyone. Now, I did see something on the back of the box that I thought looked pretty neat and looked a little out of place on the scientist, so we're actually going to swap that now. And that's this bandolier. Well, it's a neat-looking bandolier. I don't think of a scientist as having a bandolier on. I think of that as more of a soldier thing. Or in this case, a trooper. And honestly, that does really add to the figure. And honestly, looking at it with the bandolier on, I think it looks a little bit cooler. It just looks more like someone you'd want to be sending out on the front lines to try and take down your enemies. Since it's got the 3 grenades on the front and the 2 on the back. It's got a very cool look to it. Additionally, he does have the trigger finger hands, so he can, of course, hold onto your weird sci-fi guns. And it looks pretty good while doing so. He does have the, as I mentioned before, Retro would know this as the jailbreak from the Resident Evil series, as it's gotta look very much like it. I called it an AA-12 before, but I actually believe I misspoke. I'm trying to remember what the actual real-world name of this type of shotgun is, but it is a pump-action barrel shotgun. I'm just trying to remember what the name it is, and I cannot for the life of me remember at this moment. That being said, because this figure does have 2 trigger fingers, you can try and put 1 into each. Personally, I think it's a little bit much with both the rifle and the little pump-action shotgun there. Personally, I would do more of a rifle and a handgun for that. Just because it's a little bit less awkward. And seeing it in his hands, if I can get the finger to go on the trigger, which seems to be the bane of my existence today. Yeah, that actually looks pretty great as an AIM trooper. Honestly, that's probably how he's going to be displayed on my setup. He looks very generic, but he looks like he's a foot soldier about to go out to war, which is what they would use someone like him for. Now, for our other figure, our Hydra Scientist, I'm actually going to give these guys a try, see what they look like while on him, as I was not expecting these shoulder straps at all. I honestly looked at the packaging, looked at the figures, and said, oh, so that was just a promotional thing, not something they are actually putting out with the figure. And I will happily admit I was wrong. I will more than happily admit I was wrong. The gray looks pretty good on him. I think we'll go with the gray while we examine this figure. Additionally, the 2 figures do come with this very odd-looking backpack, which one could say is a jetpack or a power pack for something like the AIM rifles. And even with the strap, it fits on perfectly, almost like they were anticipating that you would do this combination. Knowing that people would want to have it look like the backpack was actually being held down by something and not just held down by magic or magnets. Same thing. For that classic AIM head. Ooh. Yikes. We have next to no articulation here. I wish I was joking. This is as far back as this head can go. That's it. And that is as far forward. That's mostly due to this rather oversized collar that he has. Now, that's not part of that harness that I put on, nor part of that backpack. So it's not like either of those are actually impeding on his articulation, at least not for his head. But they do greatly impede on his neck articulation. Now, looking at this figure, I'm noticing a lot of part reuse here as well. Those of you that are longtime Marvel Legends fans remember the puffed out pants as part of the original Red Skull figure that they did with the Captain America, the Winter Soldier line of figures. Additionally, the vest here is the same one used for the recent Spider-Man Noir for the chest piece. That being said, it's appropriate. It fits. It's good part reuse. I actually think this looks just like AIM scientist should. I think it looks great. For his arms. Even removing that backpack to make sure that that's not doing anything. That's as high up as those arms are going for us. That's mostly due to the sculpting here along the shoulder, which makes it look like he's wearing a heavy radiation suit and a lab coat. However, he also looks like he's wearing a heavy radiation suit and a lab coat. Now, he does have the bicep swivel, as we've pretty much come to expect at this point. He also does have the double-jointed elbows, but he can't go that far with them. He's only going a little bit better than 90 degrees, mostly because of the sculpting of his glove here, which comes out to here. If you look closely, the sculpting of the glove comes out, impeding with the sculpting of his sleeve there, making it so he just can't get quite that far. For his hand, we've got the full 90 degrees in and the full 90 degrees out, so that's pretty good. We do have an ab crunch on this figure, which can go pretty darn far forward. And even with the backpack on, but let's take that off, at least for now, so that it's not impeding on our movement, you can actually go pretty far back. I think that's the farthest we've seen anyone go back today with all the figures that we've reviewed. Finally, for his upper half at least, he does have the waist swivel. This belt piece that he has here is a brand new piece, and it's definitely soft goods, so it's not impeding on his articulation at all, which makes me pretty happy. For his hip articulation, that's all. That's all she wrote. That's as far as those hips are going. He does have, of course, the thigh cut and the double jointed knees. The knees can actually go back an incredible amount. I'm very surprised with how far back his knees are going. Especially with how heavily sculpted these pants are. That is perfect articulation. Color me impressed. And just as quickly as you color me impressed, you can take that straight away. With sculpted boots that are a different sculpt than the rest of his leg, so they had to be put on here separately. They're not articulated. They don't have boot cuts. Why? This piece of plastic is a different piece of plastic. You couldn't just have the black and the yellow as one piece. That's not how molding for these type of figures works. That had to be put on separately. Why you wouldn't put a boot cut on there is beyond me. For his long pointy clown shoes, look at these. They are like jester's feet. They're so long. Maybe this AIM scientist just has very long feet. I don't know. But he does have the rocker ankles, as seen here. He's got a decent amount of articulation. Wow, he's got more than a decent amount of articulation going forward. He's got great forward articulation on his feet. As well as having pretty amazing backward articulation. Especially seeing as how sculpted these boots are. If you can't see, the buckles up here and down here are not just painted on. They're actually sculpted pieces with belts that are coming off a slight bit, like they realistically would. Yet his ankles have great articulation. Hey there, Frederick, how are you today? I'm fairly well impressed with these figures. I know that these are brand spanking new, as I just literally picked this one up last night. And was my entire inspiration for doing this review today. With the backpack on and with this odd rifle that we've seen previously, as I said, I believe we've seen it before with the Captain America, Winter Soldier, either Hydra or AIM Trooper. I believe it's the same rifle that we actually have with our Hydra Trooper 2-pack that we examined earlier. But with the backpack, it just works a little bit better. That just looks very complete. So yes, I'm rather impressed with what they've done with these figures. They gave 2 trigger fingers to even the scientist here, which he looks impressive like this. He doesn't look like he's just pounding on a bunch of buttons to make MODOK come alive. He looks ready to try and take on whoever's going to be coming to disturb MODOK's power phase cycle? Does MODOK sleep? I don't know. Well, the AIM, again, as Retro knows it, Jailbreaker, well, it is a neat weapon. I don't really see myself putting it on display with these figures. Since it says AIM all over it, I don't really see myself putting it on display at all with these figures. That being said, if you can find this 2-pack in stores, go for it. It's really well done. It's really neat. They've got a lot of options. Got even an extra harness, like we see with the AIM Scientist in brown, that's included in the box that I didn't see even 1, much less 2. We've got the 2, 4, 6 weapons. So that's a small armory in these 2 figures. The 3 additional heads. 3 additional, yes. The 3 additional heads. I'm sorry, 2 additional heads. 2 figures, 2 extra heads. I think they look fantastic. This set retails for $49.99. If you can find it for that or less, especially since certain companies that are about games that need to stop what they're doing are going to be having a sale, I've been told, on their action figures, where it's going to be 25% off of these. So yes, I will be returning and repurchasing them and getting some money back. If you can find these at that store, grab them. They're great. If you want some generic villains to go along with, again, MODOK, who's the biggest AIM person that we know of. He's the big bad of AIM. Is the whole reason why AIM is who they are. They started out as a pretty good company, and then, you just kind of make one evil, massive robot, a mechanism only designed for killing. Well, things happen. Anyway, so today we have reviewed the AIM 2-pack, the Hydra 2-pack, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 3-pack, and the Nick Fury Giant Man pack, so that we can kind of bolster out our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, question for the chat. It's bonus round time. I did say in the description for this that we would have a bonus unboxing, but I didn't decide on it. I'm leaving that up to you in the chat. So, the question of the day is, we have two options on the docket for today. Would the chat prefer to see a review of the very recent, so recent that it shouldn't even be out yet, review of X-Men's Magic? Ilyana Rasputin, the kid sister of Colossus, has her own figure. This is an exclusive figure to Walgreens that is so new it's not supposed to be in stores, but I got one. It has been cited around the US, but very sparingly. So, this is option 1. Option 2, and please, again, chat, let me know what we're looking at. Option 2 is the Legendary Riders Ghost Rider set. Johnny Blaze is seen with his trademark motorcycle and flaming chain. So, chat, let me know, which one are we looking to be the unboxing today? Ghost Rider with the flaming motorcycle, or the Walgreens exclusive Magic? Alright, Retro's given her vote for Ghost Rider. Rhetoric. And Hypno, if you're still out there. Which of the two would you rather see? Magic or Ghost Rider? So far we've only got one vote, and it's for the Ghost Rider one. So, with that being said, I guess we've got our pick then, don't we? We will be reviewing Magic later on. I am dying to open up that figure, I'm not going to lie to you guys, because I've been dying to get my hands on a figure of Magic since she first got her exclusive figure as part of the Book of Vishanti pack that was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. In the meantime, we have the Legendary Riders Ghost Rider Johnny Blaze figure set. This set comes with, of course, as I said before, Johnny Blaze, his trademark flaming chain whip, and his motorcycle. Something that we haven't seen a Ghost Rider figure come with in a number of years. This is the first Ghost Rider figure that has had a motorcycle since Hasbro took over the license. That's been a number of years. The last time we saw one was in the Legendary Riders series, I believe it was 7 of the ToyBiz era. It has been quite some time. Now, we did see a Vengeance with a motorcycle back then as well, and a Danny Ketch with a motorcycle, but this is the first one we've seen in over a decade. I had to think about that for a moment. Over a decade since we've gotten a Ghost Rider with a motorcycle. On the front, we of course have our window pane, and on the back, we have quite the picture. We've got a blurb plus several detailed shots of the motorcycle. Inside, let's see what we've got. Now, the back paneling for our unboxing is It's a very unique style of symbol for Ghost Rider. It looks to just kind of be a cartoonish flaming skull with some chains. It's unique, but I'm not sure if it's really accurate. I don't ever think of Ghost Riders really having a symbol. Inside the packaging, especially since it's covering up his hand and part of his bike, we'll grab it out first. We've got Ghost Rider's flaming chain. Now this is also a first. That would make a pretty cool background for some pictures. I will agree with that. This is a first that we've seen as well of any Ghost Rider. We've never seen them come with an accessory before, much less his iconic flaming chain. For whatever reason, every time we've seen Ghost Rider figures done, they never accessorize. Either they have a chain that just goes across their body that can't be undone, or they have nothing. Additionally, we have the Ghost Rider figure in the box here. We have the handlebars, which just had the mirror pop off of them, but I believe that can be put back on. We also have one heck of a motorcycle, which smartly comes with its own kickstand, which helps for displaying your figure. And, if you're me, helps for trying to get it all set up while doing a review of him. And yes, thankfully that rear view mirror did pop right back on. Additionally, those handlebars kind of just pop right onto our bike here. Now, do note, because they do have these nubs, if you pop it all the way in, that's going to be it. You won't be able to take it off and put it back into the case. So I'm not going to quite pop those all the way in. At least not for now. First things first, before we get to reviewing the bike, let's review our Ghost Rider. Now, eagle-eyed viewers will notice something that looks very similar from something we just saw in our previous review. The chest pieces of these two figures are exactly the same. They both have the same buttons with the same outline around it. It is literally the same chest piece, and I believe the same shoulder piece and arm pieces for them as well. Even the thighs are the exact same mold, and the tops of the boots are the same as well, with different bottoms. So this is almost a review of the same figure that we just did. But let's get to reviewing this figure. Now, a very cool detail to notice is the flames even coming out of the back of the neck. That is very cool detailing there, along with the flames coming from his chest. If you look very closely, one, you'll notice that the flames on Ghost Rider here are actually translucent. You can see through them fairly well, but instead of having a sculpted neck, he has a sculpted vertebrae for his neck covered in flames. That's incredible detail work. Speaking of incredible detail work, it is not just a static head for our Ghost Rider. As what is Ghost Rider without being able to open up his mouth to do a scream as he's doing either a hellfire breath or the penance stare looking into your soul. So that is some amazing articulation they did, making it so that he can get his mouth that far open with this skull head. So that's pretty great. For me, He does need to scream when Nick Cage gets these eyes. He needs to do the old, ah, they're in my eyes. The bees, not the bees. Yes, we are getting a full-on Nick Cage style scream. It's great use of molding here. It's really well done. I'd personally love to see Marvel do a few more articulated mouthpieces. Not with every figure, please no. But with certain figures, someone like Carnage, like Venom, and of course like Ghost Rider. Someone you could really use to have them get the full range of motion from them extending their jaw down. Symbiotes are the first ones that come to mind because they're the first ones that I would think of screaming with. For our shoulder articulation, that's as far up as we're going to go. He does have the bicep swivel and the double jointed elbows that can get him to right about there. He can't quite flex all the way, but he can get a little bit of flex in there. He does have the 90-degree hand joint here, which can go pretty much 90 degrees in either direction. It's some pretty good articulation for his hands, which I would expect, since Ghost Rider is going to need to use his hands for grabbing onto the handlebars for his motorcycle and for to this chain. Before we get too far down, his neck articulation. That's actually as far back as his head goes, because of the flame effects on the back of his head and on the back of his neck. As far as looking forward, that's as far down as he's going to look. Again, that's due to the sculpt of the jaw on the figure. That being said, I do love the detail work that was done here. I think it looks fantastic. He, of course, has an ab crunch, which I think has the best ab crunch that I've seen today, which is sad to say. He can go forward quite some bit, and he can actually go backward a decent amount. Not quite as much as some of the other figures, but a decent amount. He does have the swivel here for his hips. Much like with our AIM Trooper, you're not getting a lot of play out of his hips here. He does have, of course, thigh cuts. He also has the double-jointed knees, which can go fairly far back. Much like with the AIM Trooper, I'm pretty impressed with how far back his knees can go. But also like the AIM Trooper, I'm disappointed that there's no boot cut. He has separate boots. I can even see the separation mark very slightly between his... I can see a little bit of light coming between his bottom of his knee, the top of the calf with the boots. Why he doesn't have a cut that goes with these is beyond me. There's perfect availability right there to hide some articulation. Why you didn't do it, Hasbro, I'll never know. For his boots, he does have the rocker ankles for his feet. In and out. For the forward, he actually has a great deal of forward articulation, and his backward articulation is pretty great too. What isn't great is this bit of plastic flash that just came off, because that was very odd looking on the figure. But he's got some decent articulation. It's not perfect, it's not what I would prefer it to be, but it's decent. Additionally, his belt piece here is actually sculpted as part of his hips. It can't move, but it is sculpted downward onto his hips here, so it's not going to be moving on you while you're trying to post him. He is able to hold onto his chain. Now, the thing that confuses me so much is he does have trigger fingers. Ghost Rider isn't really known for using guns as much as he is known for using this chain whip here. He's known for using this chain whip to melee people. He's not so much known for using guns. Why would he have trigger fingers on both hands, but someone like Nick Fury doesn't? That's very confusing to me. So, now that we've examined our Ghost Rider figure, who's pretty impressive, onto the main attraction of this figure. After all, you could have gotten a Ghost Rider figure from the Rhino wave. And if you're like me, you did. And then you saw this one, you saw the bike, and you went, man, I really want that bike. And then you got another figure. Looking at the bike that we've got here, the tires on it are actually a translucent yellow. You can see pretty much clear through them, so that they look like they're on fire. Now, they are free-spinning wheels, so they do move as you move them on the front and back. So previous bikes that we've gotten from Ghost Rider have had flat wheels for the display, and then underneath have had very tiny roller wheels so that you can do action poses with it, or so that you can play with things. Let's be honest with ourselves. The thing that's kind of neat to me is looking at this side, they actually even have a brake drum on here, a brake rotor, as part of the sculpt. That's some neat detailing that hasn't been done previously. Even the back one on the other side has a brake rotor, a drum. That's unusual but cool. Additionally, the front shield piece of it does come off to leave you with just a standard looking motorcycle. Not only that, but every piece of the flames that we see here can come off. You can take off every last piece of flames on here and just have a standard motorcycle with some clear yellow tires. So if you wanted to use the motorcycle for other figures that aren't Ghost Rider, which I'm not sure why you'd want to, but you definitely can, every piece comes off with one exception, apparently. This little piece right here on the back is not removable. All the rest of these can come off. So if you wish to remove all of the flame effects from Ghost Rider's motorcycle, you can, with the exception of this one little piece, which will always be on fire. That seems like an oversight. It seems like something that they would have wanted to make removable if you can remove every other flame piece except this one. It just seems like a very odd oversight to me. Why make it so you can remove every other flame piece, but you're going to always have that one just on the end as a little nod to what it is? If I wanted to use this for another figure, I'd want to remove all of the flame pieces, not just most of the flame pieces. The flame pieces also have pegs that go in on the back here to keep them in place, keep them from falling off as it's on display. There we are. So that it all can stay as it should be without falling off, even if you remove the rubber bands from them. Now, this piece did not have a rubber band on it for some reason, but this piece on the opposite side did. Personally, I'd only be displaying this with Ghost Rider, as I don't have another motorcycle to display Ghost Rider with, so it's going to be my go-to display for him. as I mentioned before with these handlebars, once you click this in, that's pretty much it. You won't be able to get that back out unless you do some light modifications to the handlebars themselves to cut down on that plastic a little bit so that it wouldn't have as much resistance trying to go back out. Because as is, they have a flare to keep it from being removed once it's been inserted. Now, of course, that can be easily resolved with the Dremel tool if you're willing to do that to your motorcycle piece. If not, then you're just going to need to put up with not putting the handlebar piece into your motorcycle if you want to put it back into the packaging at any point. Of course, just a little bit of cutting down with pretty much any kind of tool should make it so that they can be removed just as easily afterwards. So, here's your Ghost Rider motorcycle, sans the front piece, and of course your Ghost Rider motorcycle with the front piece. If you're like me, this is how I iconically think of Ghost Rider. It's with this big front shield down there, riding down through just wherever he may be. Absolutely, if you'll pardon the pun, raising hell. Now, of course, the biggest thing that people are going to want to see here, because I know it's the thing I want to see, we've got a Ghost Rider. We've got a motorcycle. Well, I'm Coconut, am I right? So, with a little bit of positioning here, we can see our man of the hour. Yeah, it really makes me wonder sometimes. I sincerely wonder at some points if Hasbro actually has ever read a Marvel comic. If any one of the sculptors have, in fact. Ironic, since now Marvel Comics themselves are making some of their covers look like Marvel Legends figures. So, altogether, that is the look of our Ghost Rider. With a little bit of adjustment there. Honestly, I love it. I think it looks amazing for a really, really cool design. It would look great on a comic book shelf as a display piece. I think it looks really awesome. Seal of approval. We've gotten Retro's approval, so it's all worth it then. Anyway. This figure is the first in the Legendary Riders series. Now, they have made 2 more figures since. There's also a Black Widow with her own motorcycle, which is a little bit odd to me. There's also a Logan Wolverine with a motorcycle. His is, of course, not on fire, neither is hers. She has more of a sport bike Ducati style, whereas Wolverine actually has the exact same bike as we see here, without the flame effects, instead with 2 saddlebags back here. Now, it does have a different paint scheme on it, so it does look different. It looks different enough that with the flame effects on this, with the shield effect on it, and with the saddlebags on the other, and none of the flame effects or shield part, you wouldn't be able to tell it's the same bike unless you know of Hasbro and how much they love to reuse molds. For me, I rather like how this looks. I think it cuts a great look to it. The only thing that I might do, just because I think I like the color scheme a little bit better on the other one, they did make another Ghost Rider a few years back with the Rhino Build-to-Figure wave. I might, for the picture today, actually do a head swap of the Legendary Rider here and that version, which had more of an all-black outfit. Now, of course, in the early days, this is what Johnny Blaze wore, was the navy blue with the bright baby blue pieces on it. And that's after he went from being the straight-up baby blue, which he had for quite some years when he was first designed. That being said, I rather like this figure. I rather like what was done with it. I rather like the design of everything as a whole. I like the bike. I like how it looks. I know there are people out there that were saying how the bike feels lazy, and I think the bike looks amazing. And it really comes together with the figure. The full free wheels look great on it. I'm a big fan of what they did here. As a big-time Ghost Rider fan, I'm very happy with what I see. If I do any improvements to this, they'll be very minor, like putting a actual piece of reflective tape here so that he can actually see out the rear view. It would just be a very neat little detail for me. Beyond that, this is pretty stellar. It looks like how I would expect our very own Johnny Blaze to look. Screaming down the highway, chain on fire, coming at you. Alright, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are finished up for the week. Now, if you have any other reviews you'd like to see me do, if you've got any other kind of figures you'd like to see, would you like to see older build-to-figures? Would you like to see older waves of figures? Would you like to see some non-Marvel figures? We can do reviews of any or all of these, as I do have plenty of figures from now until eternity. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you very much for being part of the stream. You're very welcome for Strem. Thank you all so much for joining in. Let me know on the Twitter what you guys want to see in upcoming... Let me know what you want to see for next week. As next week will be a very interesting week for me. You'll hear about why next week. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining in. Again, hit me up on Twitter at Vamp Preacher. Let me know, what do you want to see in upcoming weeks? What do you want to see as far as toy reviews go? As far as unboxings go? Do you want to see me actually play a game? I'm more than willing to. I'm willing to play games on stream too. But I know that toy unboxings are kind of a unique niche thing that are just starting to gain a little bit of ground here on Twitch. If you want to see Star Wars figures unboxings, if you want to see NECA figure unboxings, because I've got quite a few NECA figures that I can do unboxings of, including the Legacy of Kane figure, the Assassin's Creed Ezio figures, and that's not even getting into the Devil May Cry Dante figure that NECA did a few years back. I've got all of these, and I'm more than willing to do unboxings of anything and everything that you guys want to see. Let me know. If you're part of Retro's Discord, you can hit me up in there and say, hey, next week, can you do insert this? And I'll try and do my best to do whatever it is I can. Like I said, I've got enough Star Wars figures to do an unboxing just as long as I did today. I'm not even a Star Wars guy, so think about that. I've got enough Star Wars figures to do an unboxing like this. I've got enough NECA figures. I've got enough Marvel Legends to go from here to eternity. As far as Build-A-Figures go, I've just now assembled together all the Build-A-Figures that I have. If you guys want to see a stream of them, let me know who you want to see. I pretty much have all of them. Because I've got 40 Build-A-Figures now. I have a small problem. It's okay, though. It's alright. At least I'm willing to admit that I have a problem. Anyway, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for being a part of the stream. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all next week.